Today we're going to be talking about the SIRUI C60R, which is an RGB COB spotlight, and to my knowledge, it's the first of its kind. I'm Scott Jeske and welcome back to the channel. Quick disclaimer, SIRUI sent me the light, they asked me to review it, they are not paying me for this content. So this is a very interesting light. It has a lot of overlap and similarities with the SIRUI C60B bicolor COB light, which I recently reviewed. They're both very similar in look, feel, size, dimensions, etc. But the obvious differentiator here is the RGB capability. This light weighs 2 pounds, its dimensions are 6.7 inches in length, 4.8 inches in height, and 4.7 inches in width. So the reason I think this light is the first of its kind is I did some research and there are bigger higher end brands doing RGB COB lights, but there aren't a ton. And in this 60 watt range, there's really basically nothing else. And why I think this light is truly the first of its kind is the ability to mount FP970 batteries. So not only is this a tiny lightweight run and gun RGB COB light that really probably only has one other competitor, but this light is fully battery operated if you so desire, which I think makes this a very unique light, especially for run and gun or guerrilla filmmaking. Now this light has a lot of overlapping specs to the C60B. One of the biggest differences is the lux is 2300 versus the 3000 of the C60B. That's not surprising considering the distribution of light amongst the different colors of LEDs. And here we can see both lights compared against each other at 1 meter at 100%, 50%, 25%, and 10%. And not surprisingly, given the name of this light, it runs on 60 watts of power, it has DC power in, as well as the FP970 detachable battery mount, very similar to the C60B. The light has a TCLI rating of 98 and a CRI rating of 96, giving you good quality color rendition. The bicolor capabilities of this light have a range of 2800 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin, as well as, of course, the RGB capabilities, which I would say is the best part of this light. The light does have on-body controls for Bluetooth connection, 0 to 100 luminance control, white balance, RGB, saturation, etc. Every feature that you need to utilize, you can control from the back of this light. To turn it on, you can switch from battery mode to DC power mode as well. As I mentioned, this light has Bluetooth capabilities, which now, this being the third light that I've reviewed from SIRUI, I really enjoy the SIRUI app. It connects very quickly to the lights, it saves them, so every time you switch them on, they immediately come up in the app. You can make groups, you can control them individually, and this app is totally fantastic. You've got, of course, your brightness controls, presets of 25%, 50%, 100%. With this light, which is unique and is not included in the bicolor version, you can control the level of green and magenta hue, and of course you can control the white balance with custom presets as well of 3200, 4000, 5600, 6500. Then you have the tone controls, which basically gives you the entire spectrum that you can dial exactly where you want it. And then you have finer controls where you can just control the hue. So if you like your brightness and saturation level, but you just want to affect the hue, there's a control for that. And one feature that I find very useful, especially for me, this being the first RGB COB light that I've been able to use, I read about in the behind the scenes of Knives Out, how Steve Yedlin and his crew made RGB lights, and he developed an app for them, and he would use a color spectrometer and dial in the exact coordinates of the light from the outside windows to his RGB lights to match perfectly.
Where we, actually measure the color of the window light. And then if we're matching that with a sky panel, we were able to match it to the window because sky panels already accept XY coordinates, which is the chromaticity coordinates from hard color science, not just subjective movie stuff.
In the past, we really just had color temperature of tungsten to Kelvin. Now we also have hue controls of green to magenta. And then beyond that, we can map in exact HSI or RGB tones, and we can control the saturation of them. So this light's not extremely bright, but if I wanted to match the exact color of the sun, I could do that. Another awesome feature of this is when you do map out your exact colors, you can save that as a preset, and that will show up in your custom screen as a preset that you can save and you can reference, or if you need to match it to other lights, that's very useful as well. And then there's also a unique tool, which again, going back to that example of how Steve Yedlin used lights on Knives Out, which is basically a color picker tool. So I could literally point this at a white card that's reflecting light from the sun, or maybe a practical light on set that you want to match perfectly. I can pick up that color and the light will instantly match it. This is fantastic. It's awesome. And then from there, you can modify the hue, saturation, etc. All that to say, using the app, I think is a must. It's great that you have the controls on the light itself, but being able to dial in specific tones in the light, total game changer. And then last but not least, we have effects similar to what we had in the bicolor version, but we've got a few more because of the RGB capabilities. So we've got RGB cycle, in which case it just cycles through the color spectrum. We've got flash to emulate flash photography. We've got disco, you know, if maybe you've got a dance scene going on or a disco scene. We've got lightning, broken bulb, TV, candle. What's also great about these is you can control the speed and the brightness of them as well. So again, a lot of flexibility. We've got fire that's a little different. It's a little more flickery. We've got fireworks. Again, that's an RGB feature. We've got police car, fire truck, ambulance. Lots of functionality in the app. I think if you're purchasing SIRUI lights, the app is a must. So with that in mind, I want to show you some example shots that I made using the effects in this light. So I don't want to overlap too much with the review that I already did of the C60B, but I'll just quickly go over some of what's in the bag here. Again, I really like the bags that SIRUI makes. They just feel high quality, and it's very useful to have a bag with your lights. Very similar to the other light. The biggest difference is the bag doesn't have extra compartment at the top here. We've got some padded protection. We've got DC power. We've got a protector for the Bowens mount. And then as you can see here, a reflector, a battery mount. Does not come with the batteries though. And one improvement that they did make over the C60B is that the hand grip feels a little bit more ergonomic, fits a little bit better in the hand. And then the screw mount for the 3/4 thread is now metal, which is better. It's a step in the right direction. But one thing I keep suggesting to them is that if there's a way to make this handle mount aluminum or something a little bit sturdier. And this light is lightweight. It's not meant to have huge soft boxes or anything that would strain it. But my big reason for a mount being metal versus plastic is safety is of top priority on a set. So the last thing you want is worrying about if your light is going to fall, or if it's going to break off a stand, or if it's going to, God forbid, fall on a talent.
Mary and Joseph.
Just having the peace of mind that the thing that holds it to a stand is the sturdiest part of it. I think it's more for Hollywooding, run and gun stuff. You can always buy different mounts, but I am glad to see that it's improving in the right direction so far. So what are the uses of this light? Something I've been thinking about is you'll see on a lot of channels, people use at a minimum, you know, the Aperture 120D or the 300D, and those are phenomenal lights. I'd love to have one someday. But I think when we see everyone using those lights, we have this feeling of, well, I can't make videos until I have that light. So if getting a smaller, cheaper light is the difference of you making videos or not making videos, you should start off getting the smaller, cheaper lights. So that's one thing to consider right off the bat. And people make a great case for why you would get a bigger light. It's like having a faster lens. You can always stop the light down, but if you don't have enough brightness from the light, you have to bring in more light. So having a bigger light just mitigates that. You can start as bright as you want and you can dim it down to adjust. So it's very useful. I'm a huge proponent of big bright lights, But I do think there is a time and a place for these smaller 60-watt lights. And having used this light and put it through the paces of a few different scenarios, I think that the biggest market and place for this light is run and gun. And I say that broadly. And what I mean by that is if you are somebody who travels for corporate shoots and you've got 30 minutes to go to an office and film, this is the light for you. Especially if you're working in a dark room. Again, this light is super versatile. I could see it being a great background light. You know, these RGB backgrounds are all the rage right now. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Maybe you're doing weddings. And then how I would use it and how I've been using it is for run and gun narrative filmmaking. So if you're doing a micro budget or indie production and you're using something like the FX3 or the A7 IV, those cameras have incredible low light capabilities anyway. So being able to go out in the woods and bring something like this and throw your FP970 batteries on it, and it just cuts out the clunkiness of having huge lights, having huge V-mount batteries. It's very spontaneous. And again, if it's the difference of having a small light for run and gun and actually getting content made and waiting for bigger lights and more money and bigger crews, this is the way to go. It's a no-brainer. So all that to say, a light like this, it's not for everything. Sometimes you do need to match to sunlight. Sometimes you need way more light. But if you were operating with a small crew, small budget, intimate spaces, or nighttime exteriors, I think there are a lot of exciting use cases for this light. I think it's the first of its kind. I have not seen a light like this, and you got to give them credit for the innovation of having RGB, small compact design, relatively inexpensive, and battery capability. This light retails for $400 US, and it's available now on SIRUI's website. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed what you saw, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Even if it's an emoji, it goes a long way, and I really appreciate you all watching. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.